Alright, so the first step to doing an oil change on your Buick Encore 2018 to 2021 is to remove the oil fill cap. Once we have that removed, this is the location of the oil filter. It's going to be right there, the one with the brown cap right there. Next step, we're going to grab our 24mm socket with a swivel adapter or a universal joint, and then a long extension so we can reach down there, and we're just going to loosen this up. It should be on there pretty tight, so you might need a longer ratchet or maybe even a breaker bar. Once I've loosened it up enough by the ratchet, I'm going to shove a rag down there just in case we spill a little bit, and I'm going to finish taking it off by hand. Alright, so once I finish unscrewing it by hand, I just pull it all the way out. As you can see, our rag trick did its job. Now you can see our O-ring. I have a little pick that I'm going to use to pull it out of the little groove that it's sitting in. You don't have to use exactly the tool I'm using. Anything sharper, something that'll help you grab the rubber will do. And just make sure to try to get it under the O-ring, just how I'm doing right here. And just pull it all the way up to the lip and just pull it right off. Now go ahead and grab the O-ring that came with your replacement filter. I personally am using the AC Delco filter. I really wouldn't use anything else. And just grab a little bit of oil from the oil filter cap and rub it onto the O-ring. Do not forget this step. What this does is make sure that when you're screwing the oil filter back on, the O-ring doesn't get pinched or put in a bad spot. It makes sure that it sits perfectly and so that you don't have any oil leaks. Now, when you're putting it back on, make sure you're putting it in the groove that the old one was. Make sure you don't put it all the way down past that groove because you're going to have an oil leak. Make sure you're putting it in the groove. Now grab your replacement filter, put it all the way down into that hole, and make sure you push it in until you feel a click. Make sure it's square, maybe give it a little bit of a rotation just to make sure it's perfectly seated. Now go ahead and carefully, without bending any of the filter media, put it into the hole where it came from and screw it in by hand at first. Do not use tools until it stops turning by hand. This is done to ensure that you don't cross thread any of the threads or anything like that. The filter cap is made out of plastic. Now I'm doing this on, I believe, the cap marked not Heinz. There's a different filter cap that's black and has the word Heinz on it. I do not have that one. The process is very similar. The filter is different. Ask me how I know that. And the process should be very similar. It should even be the same 24mm socket. But just make sure you're screwing it on by hand. Make sure it's tight, but not too tight. As soon as you really start to feel it cinch down, give it a little bit extra of a turn, just like how I did right there. And that's all you need to do. Now under the car, we're looking for our drain bolt. It's one with the 14 Newton meters right there. And I couldn't really get a good angle of me pulling it out, so I'm just showing that you guys, it's just a 10mm bolt that you pull out. Mine was on pretty tight, but it shouldn't really be a problem. And you can see the oil is draining very well. Setting my torque wrench, I know the spec is 14 Newton meters, but I'm going a little bit above that. I'm going up to 20 Newton meters, and I just torqued that down. You guys don't need to see that. I'm using Pennzoil 5W30 Platinum. This is a great full synthetic oil, honestly one of the best on the market. Dexos certification, you know, best oil out there right now for the price especially. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm going to be pouring in 4 quarts. The service manual calls for 4.75 quarts, but I'm putting in 4. Then I'm going to check it. And it's in this car you really have to pour slowly because the car drinks it pretty slowly. As you can see, a little bit came out of the bottom of the filter because I was pouring it a little bit too fast. Now after I've poured about 4 quarts, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be checking the dipstick. Make sure you pull it out, wipe it off, because any splashing that came from the engine is going to get on the dipstick and mess up your reading. So make sure you pull it out, wipe it off, stick it back in there, then pull it out again and take a reading. As you can see, 4 quarts brought it up to about the halfway point on the dipstick. So I'm going to pour in about another half quart to get it up to that full point. As you can see, it wasn't all the way up to the top, so I poured a little bit more. The dipstick is made out of metal, so it's a bit hard to read, but as you can see, I got it right up to that full point. Now what I'm going to be doing is cleaning up my mess, grab a little bit of brake cleaner and just spray it all over. Make sure you give it a good shake. And you can use this stuff, you know, you can just spray it all over the place. It has a very low flash point, so it's just going to dissolve very quickly. Just make sure to get rid of all the oil so that you don't have any smoke, you know, coming from the engine bay when you turn on the engine, which would be just the oil burning off. It's not, you know, bad. Just I wouldn't want any of you guys to get scared or anything like that. Now to reset the oil monitor, just go into the settings, go all the way down to oil life, and then just hold the set/clear button, and it should reset up to 100. Once you guys do that, you can start the engine. I did that with the engine running, and then after about 5 minutes, you can shut the engine, let it sit for about 5 minutes, check the dipstick, and then top off as necessary. Make sure you guys are recycling your oil responsibly. A little tip: if you used the entire jug, you can use that to drain your old oil. I personally already have an oil container that I just drop off to the recycling place. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below.